And now I would like to give the floor to Judy Shamoun-Baranes.
Thank you. So I'm going to switch to something quite different and talk about movement, and animal movement. And movement is one of the most fundamental aspects of life on Earth. It shapes how animals survive on a daily scale. How do we find food? How do we find shelter? How do we escape from predators, find safety, or find a new mate, or a place to live? And if we consider the movements that animals do, that organisms do for these daily ways of surviving, well, it shapes where and when we see animals. So it shapes biodiversity on planet Earth. And if we scale up and we consider how animals move and how they interact with each other or with the environment around it, then we can also see how movement influences interactions between species, entire communities, ecosystems, and even how those ecosystems function and what kind of services they may provide us. So some examples from birds, which I'll talk about, are the barn owl, for example, a beautiful bird which is great at catching mice, hundreds of mice a day when it's breeding. So imagine natural pest control. But birds also, when they move, different species can transport seeds, so they can influence where plants grow in different places. But also by collecting food, for example, gulls that go along the shore and collect mussels, they bring them back to their nest, and they deposit calcium and other nutrients that normally aren't found there. So they influence the soil, and they may then indirectly influence also the plants that grow there. So movement can influence many, many different things. And we study bird movement for many different reasons. There are different things that we're interested in understanding. From the daily survival, how animals survive, how they find food, how they support their young. But also, that kind of knowledge is used to inspire technology. New technology using flight, using understanding of flight, how birds actually deal with weather and wind conditions. We also use that information to try and resolve conflicts between humans and nature, which arise more and more because we live so close together, sharing the same space. We have a strong impact on the environment, and animals have to deal with that in some way. So I'll give you one example of our research. And this is research that we do together with the Royal Netherlands Air Force. And you might ask, well, why do they care about birds? Well, we use their technology radars, which are used to detect aircraft. They can also detect birds. And we use that information to study how birds react to weather. We know that when they migrate, weather conditions are really important. So we can study how they change their behavior in relation to wind and rain, for example, and create predictions. And with those predictions, we can actually forecast in the future. We use a weather forecast and put that into our model, and we forecast migration. So the Air Force can then look at that forecast and decide whether or not they're going to take a risk when they go out to fly. Should they train today when there's high migration, or should they wait 2 or 3 days when migration will pass? And that's work that we do together with them. But something that's really exciting is that we don't only have to use military radar, which is very hard to access, but we've found that we can use weather radar. So radar that's used to give us the weather report every day not only picks up raindrops, but it picks up big drops of water, birds. So we can use weather radar, and now we can scale up. We don't have to stop at the Netherlands. We can actually expand these ideas and imagine now not only can we track birds in one country or two, we can use the International Weather Radar Network to track birds across all of Europe. And this is something we've been dreaming about for years, and we now have an international network working together, people that are studying birds, insects, bats, radar engineers, computer scientists, working together to try and, on the one hand, track animals on a very large scale, and on the other hand, improve, for example, weather products. So instead of looking at birds by accident, they really are looking at rain. And when they throw out the birds, we can use that data. But now I'm going to zoom in to a personal story. So like I said, movement influences how an animal can survive and how it can be successful in this world. And we're interested also in understanding, well, how does an animal behave when it has to take care of itself, find food for itself, and how does that behavior change when it suddenly has to take care of its young? When it has to change its time schedule because it's got young in the nest, it has to go back on time to feed it, and it has to make sure that they're not eaten by other predators, for example. Hard decisions that have to be made every day, again and again. So how do we do that? Well, we've been studying birds and bird movement. For example, 2 species of gulls on a colony in Texel, lesser black-backed gulls, the ones with a dark back, you can see it here as well, and herring gulls with a light back. They look quite similar. They live in very, very close proximity to each other, but they have to find a way to live together and without competing too much so that they can't all survive. So how do they do that? And we track them with small tags, GPS tags. It has the same technology in most of your mobile phones, and we can monitor exactly where these birds go. We can measure their movements every few minutes and even every few seconds. Try and understand what they do to survive. Basic questions. How far do they go for food? Where do they search for their food? How long does it take? How much energy does it cost? And what's the difference between different strategies for survival? Are some better than others? And some of the examples, what we've seen with these lesser black-backed gulls, for example, which we've expected to be mainly marine birds, we've seen that, yes, they do spend a lot of time on sea, but we also see differences we didn't always expect. So, for example, we see that males spend more time on sea than females do. They travel farther from the nest than the females do, and yet both males and females are taking care of their young. We also see that both the males and females, for example, when they have young, they actually go farther to search for food, but they spend less time. So they're working harder than they normally do because of this constraint of coming back and feeding the kids on time. So these two, the males and females, have to structure their day in a very special way to try and make sure that they meet the requirements, not only for themselves, but for the young. But we also see that all these gulls are not all the same. So individuals also have their own strategies to survive. Some have their own habits, something we didn't always expect, sometimes surprising, and sometimes they do really unusual things. So like I said, normally, they go about 30 kilometers from the nest, not that far, but once in a while they do really crazy things. They go all the way to England and come back to the colony. Pretty far, so how do they do that? So these kind of things that we discover also raise new questions for us that we can't always answer right away. Our other species, the herring gull, we see similar things. They're different from the lesser black-backed gulls. They forage mainly for mussels along the coast. But once in a while, we've got individuals that just do something else. So we've got one male last year, which seems to have a split personality. Spends some days along the coast eating mussels, like most of the other gulls, and then every other day he goes to Amsterdam. And he doesn't just go to Amsterdam. He doesn't randomly search around what to do when I go for a day in Amsterdam. He goes to the same exact neighborhood, and I won't name which one. Most people should be able to recognize where he's going. And he goes there every time, along the canals, sitting on the same bridge. And, well, what is he looking for? We can guess he's looking for food. But what surprises us is that instead of only traveling 10 kilometers to food, he's now traveling 2.5 hours each way, so 70 kilometers from the colony, just to come to Amsterdam and go back. So now we wonder, well, is that a better strategy than natural behavior? What is he doing? So our next step in our research, we realized that there's a lot of things that we can do on our own as researchers, but there's a lot of help we need. So we're interested, for example, something's going on in Amsterdam, but I'm not in the center of Amsterdam every day. It might be fun, but then I'd never get any work done. But there are a lot of people that are there. So we now have developed an app, for example, where people can follow these birds. So we put our tracking data available online, and with certain places where we want people to just go out and take a look at what's going on. You don't have to be a bird watcher. You just have to like using your phone, be a little bit curious about what's going on around you, and answer a few simple questions for us. And with those questions, we hope that we're going to get new insight into how people and wildlife interact, what our birds are doing, and what's attracting them to some of these surprising places sometimes. And for me, one of the reasons why I find birds so inspiring, this is an example of migratory movements of these same lesser black-backed gulls that spend their time in North Holland for the entire summer and then go to very different places in the winter, is that birds are a constant reminder for me of connectivity. They show us how our world is interconnected. They show us how things that happen in the Netherlands is connected to West Africa, or to England, or France, or Spain. But they also show us how things that happen at sea are connected to what's happening on land. And they show us how people are connected to wildlife. In fact, we all are connected. And we're all sharing the same environment, and we're sharing sometimes also the same resources. And hopefully by having a better understanding of these processes, we can also find a better way of living together and in balance. So I hope the next time you see a bird flying by, it'll provide a little bit of inspiration for you as well. It'll be a reminder of just how Everything is interconnected, and maybe you'll wonder if you see a gull annoying you in the city, whether it's a city bird or a country bird, or what it's been doing the day before. So, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Judy. Are there any questions from the audience? No. Yes, there's one question.
Do you have any idea then why this bird was going to the city center all the time? Some thoughts about it?
Yeah, so of course our first expectation that it's going there for food, but what surprises us is then it would be from an energetic perspective. It means that it would have to get more gain going to Amsterdam, even though it costs more to fly there, than it would get from, for example, foraging on mussels. And that's something that we're still trying to find out. So now we want to dig deep into this and try and say, okay, so one, maybe the flight isn't as expensive as we think. Maybe 2.5 hours of flight isn't so bad. It's choosing the right weather conditions. And maybe this bird has figured out that, well, if I go to Amsterdam at this place that has a herring stand and a hot dog stand and an ice cream stand in the summer and lots of people around there, that I know that if I stay there an hour, I'm definitely going to get something. But we don't know exactly yet. So that's where we need more information on the spot. Yeah, our intuition does say that this bird has just figured out that it's worth it to go to Amsterdam, that there's enough garbage around, basically. There's enough food available in this one spot that it's worth it to go all the way there, pick up a hot dog or a piece of herring, yeah, and go back.
Perhaps he likes the energy on that place, because I go there also very often.
Yeah? But
The energy there, so perhaps
oh, he likes the energy. He likes the atmosphere. Exactly. Well, yeah. No, but it's not. So it's not a joke. Yeah, indeed. I mean, not all. We have other gulls that go to Amsterdam. They go to different places. So perhaps, yeah, he's just figured out the way this neighborhood works. He has his favorite roofs, and he knows, okay, if I stand here, I'm definitely going to see when person number A drops the hot dog. That's going to happen.
that place, that picture,
Yeah.
you feel more. I come there very often.
Yeah.
You feel more energy. It's more life.
Yeah.
Than
Than other places, exactly. So this is a smart guy, this gull, right? He's picked up something that you already knew.
Thank you, Judy. I think I'm sorry we have to go to the next guest. Maybe you can
Thank you. We can talk
continue
later.
talking in the cafe later on.